Hi everyone, welcome back. So in this video we will cover questions 23 to 25. This is from Acer's Green Book. This is section 1. Okay, so these questions revolve around a table. You do get tables and graphs in section 1, just like you would in section 3. And you can kind of analyze them the same way as you would in section 3, which is pretty great. So take your time, read the description, read the notes on the table, read all the axes and everything. Look at the numbers. You're not going to be asked to calculate anything, but just kind of look at the trends. So, question 23. The costings used in the basket of goods approach are ideal in that they are blah, blah, blah. So, we've got the word ideal in there. We're looking for why they are ideal, not necessarily accurate or reliable or valid or any other scientific terminology you can use. We're specifically looking for ideal. Okay, so C is the correct answer, but we will eliminate. So A says more accurate than most. That's wrong because we don't know what the other approaches are. If they'd given us a list of all the different approaches and asked us if this one was ideal, maybe that would be the answer, but we don't know what the other approaches are, so we can't make that judgment. So that one is wrong. Okay, D, based on the assumption that expenditure is based on personal preference. So that is wrong because the basket of goods is, like in the passage it explains that the basket of goods approach is basically a big basket, and in it there are all these different things that families buy, and the researchers have decided what goes in that basket, not the families. And so you're kind of removing personal preference from the equation because the researchers have specifically said these are the things that you can buy. So personal preference doesn't really relate to it, and so it's not based on the assumption about personal preference. Okay, B, low enough to be within the reach of most families. So this doesn't actually make that approach ideal. It may make it more accurate, it may make it more accessible because you could include more demographics in it, but it doesn't make it ideal. And then C is based on certain assumptions about the nature of parents' expenses. Yes, and the reason is, and the whole reason that they're using the baskets of goods approach is because it removes variation. The researchers are saying, here are the 10 things that you can buy. There's no variation on what you can buy. And now just give me how much you would spend for that. Whereas if they didn't have this approach and they were like, what do you buy in a week? Then there's going to be so much variation that you can't actually use that approach to compare between high, low, and middle income families. So that's what makes it ideal. This is very similar to the way that you can figure out pricing for in a business situation. So if anyone studied commerce or business and you've learned about pricing and pricing models, where you sort of propose an ideal product and then you ask for pricing around that, that's kind of similar to what this is doing. I don't know if that's helpful, but I thought I'd put it in there anyway in case somebody knows what I'm talking about. Okay, question 24. Which one of the following is the most likely method for updating the figures in the table to reflect price changes? So basically, as I'm sure you know, every year due to inflation, prices generally tend to go up. So, bread today is a lot more expensive than bread 100 years ago, but inflation has also increased wages and stuff, and so over time prices go up and prices change. So it's saying, how can we update this table to reflect these prices? The answer is B. So A says gathering data on actual expenditure patterns. This doesn't reflect price changes, but rather purchasing habits. Remember, the researchers have given a list of things that parents can buy, and so we need to look at how that specific list of things has changed in terms of price. And so tracking expenditure patterns for a whole range of other things isn't relevant, and it doesn't tell us how price has changed. You could maybe get from it price changes. If you notice that people stop buying a particular thing, you could then maybe infer that that's because that price has gone up, but it's such like a long bow that you'd have to draw that it's not correct. Okay, D says revising the contents of the basket of goods to reflect new consumption patterns. Again, this doesn't reflect price changes, but rather purchasing habits. Again, purchasing habits could be an indication of a price change, like I just explained, but the question is specifically asking about price changes, so that is wrong. And again, that's like a 5-step process for D, and we want a 1-step process, basically. C, applying the consumer price index to an updated version of the basket of goods. So the consumer price, like I don't have a commerce background, so I might be wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure that the consumer price index is what is changing, not the basket of goods. The basket of goods is staying the same. So we don't want to change the basket of goods. What we want to change is how much those goods cost. And the way we know how much they cost is because we know about inflation. And that's where the consumer price index comes into it, which is why B is the correct answer. We're literally taking the consumer price index and applying it to the basket of goods. So let's say, for example, we know over 10 years, the price of everything, let's just say, went up 5%. We would take 5% and we would increase all the cost of the basket of goods by 5%. That's basically what we're doing here. We wouldn't change what's in the basket of goods. Okay. Question 25. The table assumes people on middle incomes are more likely than people on low incomes too. Now remember, as I've just said, these families are only allowed to buy certain things within the basket. They're given a list of things by the researchers, which include food and clothing, fuel, household provisions, cost of schooling, gifts, pocket money, and entertainment. And that's what they're being measured on. They're being measured on how much money do you spend on these 10 items. We're not tracking how much money you spend outside of those 10 items. We don't care. We're tracking how much money you spend on those 10 items. Those 10 items can't change. But if you look at the table, you will see that middle income families spend more money than lower income families on those 10 items, which means the only way that can happen is that they are buying more expensive versions of those 10 items. So, I don't know, one of them was clothing. Instead of buying clothing from a secondhand store or vintage store like Target, they might be buying clothing from a designer store. Or fuel, maybe they're buying the more expensive fuel. That's still both groups are still buying the same items, but one of them is just buying the more expensive version, which is why they are getting spending more money. So that's why the answer is A, which is buying higher price goods. B, stay within their budgets. We have no idea what the budgets of these people are. It doesn't tell us that, so we don't know if they're staying in their budget or not. C, meet their family's needs. We have no idea if their family needs are being met. They could be buying everything in that basket of goods and their family needs are still not met. We don't know that. And then incur unforeseen expenses. We have no idea. So that's why the answer is A. Okay, that was a quick one. Questions 23 to 25. In the next video, we will go over question 26 to 29. As always, leave comments down below if you have any questions. Check the description for more ways to contact me, and I've got more Gamsat resources. And let me know if these are helpful or not, and if you need more explanations or want to see more videos on Section 1 tips and stuff. I'm happy to help if I am being useful. Okay, see you next time. Bye.